Now, total contrast with the jazz clip that we had at Fat Swallow. This is Bill Monroe, who's the real star of bluegrass music, which was probably the original form of country music. Bluegrass is probably the earliest kind of form of Americana music. Okay. Bear in mind, this is coming from a different cultural background. Remember, jazz has its origins in Africa. Bluegrass music has its origins in kind of Irish and Scottish folk music, because people from those areas settled in the kind of Kentucky, Tennessee area of America, and their music, their folk music, eventually became what we think of as bluegrass music. So I'll play for a little bit and then pause it and try and identify some things worth looking out for.
Well, old Judge George D. Hay used to say, "Here's Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, let her go, boys." People would come from far away to dance all night till the break of day. When they called her a holler, "Do-si-do," you knew Uncle Ben was ready to go. Hey, that about sundown, how the hill is above the town. With the fiddle or the hound to bring, you can hear it talk, you can hear it sing.
Couple of things to listen out for. Classic country song in that we only need the one chord, the tonic. We briefly visit the D chord, the 4 chord, the subdominant, and then we resolve on the dominant chord, the E. If you look at the guy's hands, it looks like he's playing G's and C's and D's, but he's got a capital on. It's in the key of A. So simple chord pattern, just using our 3 primary chords, major chords. Okay, quite a fast tempo. Bluegrass music, off net that. So there's your tempo there, probably about 150 BPM, something like that perhaps. So it's kind of quite upbeat music. Other things to listen out for. Notice how much of a kind of twang the guy has in his voice. You know, country music's partly about this kind of very nasal vocal quality, and they all share that kind of vocal tones, partly due to the accent they have in the bluegrass area of America. Whereas maybe he's in kind of jazz music or blues music, you're looking out for a kind of growl type vocal or a falsetto vocal or something like that. We've got a twang tone vocal. Notice as well, when we go into the choruses, we lift up to the D chord and the 3 singers come in together and they harmonise using a stack harmony, very close kind of harmony. It's highly likely that the harmony notes they're using is that Bill Monroe's probably on the 3rd note of the scale, one of the other guys is on the 5th note of the scale, and then the top harmony's on the root note but placed at the top of the chord, and you'll kind of listen out for those kind of 3 vocal parts. And they're kind of creating a chord almost with the voices as they sing there. Play a little bit more. Another feature of bluegrass music is that pausing and just having vocals in a cappella and hearing the harmonies clearly without any instruments. One thing that is a pretty obvious thing to say really, but quite important, is just look at the instrumentation. You know, the key thing in this bluegrass music is lead instrument, in this case is mandolin, we've got a fiddle there, we've got a banjo, acoustic guitar and a double bass. You know, we're not using any of those instruments we'd associate with jazz, horns and pianos and things like that. And the idea is with bluegrass music, it's got to be almost purely acoustic. They're sharing a microphone there, and they're going to step in and out of the mic. Part of the convention is that the instruments kind of step in and out of the microphone to kind of showcase their individual skills. The violin players had a bit of a break, the mandolin player's taking a solo, and that's part of the kind of tradition of bluegrass music, that it's not amplified at all. It's another key feature, there's no drums on there. You know, unlike nearly all the other examples that we'll be looking at on your document, there's no drums. We still have a rhythm though. The bass player's playing 2 beats, 2 bass beats in each bar. They're going bum, 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 bum. And if you look closely, the mandolin player, when he's not singing or playing a solo, he's playing on what would be the backbeats. It's probably much higher and sound like this. So you get the bum, 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 and in between, bum, 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 bum. And it creates almost kind of like a drum kind of rhythm using the instruments to create a pulse and make it kind of danceable. A little bit more. And the solos on the violin and on the kind of mandolin sound really kind of complex and quite virtuoso. But there's a key thing in country music that has similarities with blues, in that there's a scale that they're probably using quite a lot. It's basically like a sixth chord. So we got, and they're kind of riffing around that arpeggio, but they're hammering on, so you're getting these. And you're getting these grace notes, hammer-on notes, sometimes they're called slip notes, where you use the open strings of the guitar or the violin or the mandolin. And it just kind of embellishes it and makes it sound a little bit more complex. And you'll find that lots of country songs have similar melodies as well, based around that arpeggio chord, just like in blues. You know, people can improvise blues songs really easy because you're using the same kind of 5 notes or something like that. But in this case, it's more like a kind of a major pentatonic rather than a blues pentatonic. And it'll start to resemble other kind of country songs that you'll hear or things we might have sang in class. Final little clip.
Made a little lot of how to ring, you could hear it talk, you could hear it sing.
So there you go, a perfect example of early bluegrass. Although it says 1965 there, again these guys have been around for like 20 or 30 years. This is music you would have heard in the 20s and 30s, and it was like lots of music of that era, it was very kind of regional. It was the sort of music that you heard in a little pocket of the South, around about where Kentucky and Tennessee and those places are. And it was only with mass media and radio and records that music was able to kind of spread out to that area. So plenty for you to write about, I think, to do a paragraph on bluegrass music.